All right, everyone. Welcome back to Automate Live, day 2 here in Detroit, Michigan, where we have an amazing show happening around automation, robotics, manufacturing, what new technology and trends are going to be impacting the future of the way we work. And when you look at the future of the industry, there's a global leader out there, and that's Siemens. So it's great to have Chris Stevens here today. He's the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Siemens Automation US. Chris, thanks for joining us on the show today.
No problem. It was an easy ride in, so I only live 30 minutes away.
Exactly, right. Siemens has...
How could I miss it?
You guys have an amazing headquarters right here in Detroit, Michigan. You guys have been involved in this community and this area for decades. And we could talk about how much you've been involved in the past, but let's talk about the future. Let's talk about the future of what Siemens is seeing when it comes to the industry. And I think one of the first things we always hear is AI. You know, AI is the biggest buzzword that's out there that's being thrown around, from robotics to AI to from robotics to PLCs to motion control to machine vision. What is Siemens seeing and how AI is going to be changing the way we work?
So first, let's take a history lesson since you brought up Detroit.
Yeah.
If you look at what happened with assembly lines, as an example, in Detroit back in the early 1900s, it changed society as we know it. Mm-hmm. So it made products more affordable and readily available to us, like cars. So you could drive 20 minutes to work, and now you can live anywhere you want, as an example. So completely changed society and how we view it. Internet's another innovative technology, completely changed society. You can connect, get the information right away. The reason why I tell you that, Jake, is because what we learned from that is the innovators and the leading adopters are the ones that were the big winners.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing right now is this is 100% innovative technology that is going to change society.
And in a lot of ways, AI is already impacting, and it's like generative AI, right? Everyone is out there using ChatGPT to either complete their thesis statement in college or help them with homework in high school. But AI is being used on the manufacturing floor today. It's no longer just this theoretical idea of what we could do. There's real use cases right now that are really helping companies when it comes to collecting and contextualizing data to start with. So let's talk about that. What is Siemens doing when it comes to data around the manufacturing space?
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick stat there. The biggest barrier to implementing AI is poor quality. Yeah. And actually, it's 68% of companies say because of poor quality, they can't leverage and embrace AI.
So you're
outside of the emails that you just talked about.
So outside the emails. So one of the reasons the technology is there, but people don't have necessarily the confidence enough with the data.
That's right.
To be able to say, I want to deploy this on the floor. So something's got to change.
And that's the first place we go. So the first place we go is, how are you collecting data? And a lot of times what we see is they're collecting data almost line item by line item by line item. So think of an Excel spreadsheet, and they're collecting it that way. And what they're doing is they're creating dashboards.
Yes.
So they're creating one dashboard here, and all they're getting are notifications and alarms, right? Not necessarily what's happening, but just there is something happening.
Especially not even happening real time, right? Because a lot of times
that's right.
That Excel sheet's actually probably one of the last resorts. It's happening on a piece of scrap paper, or it's happening on a whiteboard. And then that whiteboard, is at the end of the day, is walking around, copying those numbers down onto a laptop. Then they're going up into an Excel sheet. And then a week later, the management floor is then actually looking at that and then trying to decipher what that data actually means.
So a real use case for us is we're engaged with a large food and beverage company. Their plant manager stays 2 hours after every shift, goes through all the reports to try to identify what happened. Yesterday there was 10,000 units. Today there's only 6,000. So they're literally going through the reports, very much a manual basis. But kind of to go back to the data, so we go to the data first. We try to understand how they're collecting the data. And then we have some unique technology. It's called graph language or graph level. And what that does is now it can take those line items of data and start building those relationships very quickly. So this robot's connected to this motor's connected to this sensor. So now you have intelligence built in. So that's the first thing we do. And then also what companies are doing, and I won't get too deep because I know you and I, 3 weeks from now in this
Realize Live back here.
Realize Live, we'll get into more of the tech talk there, but we have also federated. What we do is we deal with federated nodes. So what companies, just quickly, is they have their data all over in federated environments. And the reason why they have to do that because of performance. So what's critical is that we connect those federated environments. So we have that capability too. That's unique in the industry. So that's the first thing. That's the first area we go, and we clean up that 68% that I talked about, because if you don't have that, you can't leverage large language models, because that's 100%. The next level. You mentioned generative AI. But really where we're going is large language models.
Yeah.
That's the next level.
And I think when you look at data as well, old data is only so valuable. You need real-time data.
That's right.
You need to create real-time action when it comes to making productivity happen on the floor. And I think when we talk about what bring real-time action out there, we can dive into Copilot a little bit.
That's right.
Copilot is this next solution. Tell us about what Siemens is doing with Copilot. I know there was a great example that you had. There's 20 people working. Tell us about that story.
Well, and my favorite story, though, is I was just talking to somebody yesterday from another company that was in our booth. And what they said is, I know we implemented this tool for OEE.
Yeah.
And basically it just said, great, and now I know exactly how much my problem cost me. I knew I had a problem, but now I just know how much it cost me. So I think that's pretty interesting. So what Copilot does is now what, the vision and some of the companies that we're engaged with now is we want that operator to walk up to that machine and actually dialogue with it. Mm-hmm. So they want to say, how is the performance today?
Yeah.
So today it was 6,000 versus 10,000. Okay, then what happened? And now you dialogue, you prompt it just like you're talking to a human being.
Yeah.
And you say, why is that? And they'll say, well, one of the operators didn't show up for 2 hours of the shift, as an example, or the temperature was different today than it was yesterday.
Waiting for product at this loading station.
Exactly.
And no product came, so that affected all this downstream process.
That's
especially
right.
in those large facilities where you can't see what's happening on the other side of four walls.
And that's exactly it. So, and that's why it's so important to get that data and have those relationships with the data, because when you walk up and you want to have that dialogue with the Copilot, you need to have those connections, right? And ideally, those connections happen in some sort of digital twin, because the next conversation we get all the time is, what about hallucinations?
Yes.
And so our answer is, first of all, the more you train the model, the better it gets, so the less hallucinations you have. But secondly is if you have something to correlate it back to. So what you can always ask the Copilot is for context. Mm-hmm. So you can always say, well, give me more context behind that. And what it can say is, we validated this against the digital twin, and that's how we came up with this answer.
Yeah.
Because we get that all the time. We were doing a keynote last week, and the first question was, how do I trust it, right? Because that is usually the first question. So, and that's the difference.
And I look at Copilot is a mentor, right? When you have a continuing aging workforce in manufacturing, a lot of tribal knowledge is leaving the floor.
Yep.
And if we're not able to go out and address problems that are happening on our equipment, happening on the production and the manufacturing line, we're not able to then fix the problems. And so I view AI as it's that 40-year-old veteran who's been working on the manufacturing floor, who you can go and ask a question to and saying, I have this error, I have this problem. How do I fix something like that? And that's kind of what you're building out there when you can leverage work instructions and accessibility to manuals real time to say, how do I solve this problem? What are my steps? Copilot is a tool for that.
Okay, so you mentioned the control center, and I want to go back to that.
Yeah,
so it's a perfect setup for that. So what we did, we're engaged with this company. Again, it's a consumer product goods company. And they have, and it kind of relates to what you're saying, so they have 20 screens. They literally have somebody that sits down, and they have multiple people that are in this control center. Yeah. And by the way, they call this their competitive advantage. So I was at dinner with them, with one of their senior vice president of operations. He was like, you got to be quiet because our competitors are here at dinner as well. So they're very secret about this control panel. So they're looking at 20 screens, and it's those alarms and things I was talking about. So the alarms are going off, and they're saying something's wrong here. And each center is controlling 15 different assembly lines that they're focused on, and then the next person. So what they're doing is they're triangulating that and saying, okay, they're making phone calls, they're sending emails, they're doing whatever they can to solve the issue, and then getting it back to that supervisor and saying, do X, Y, Z, right? Go fix this, change this, lever this, change this pressure, whatever it is. And so that's the control center. So what we're doing now is we're now introducing Copilot today. So the first thing we do is we're training the model. We're using all that knowledge that exists in that person that's sitting in the seat. And we're saying, okay, train the model, understand all these. And so now what's happening is, instead of just an alarm, it's actually popping up and saying, hey, here's your issue. And it's kind of what we talked about earlier. So now we're reducing that staff by 75%.
Okay.
Right? And the good news is they have gaps everywhere else.
Absolutely.
So it's not like those people aren't going away. Yeah. They're being repurposed. And that's the key, and that's what's critical. So that knowledge is critical to them, but now they're able to leverage that knowledge somewhere else, right? And they're also able to put that knowledge in a large language model, so multiple people can now have access to it.
100%. When you can create data that's contextualized and actionable, and allows these companies to continue to move forward in the industry.
That's right. Yeah.
So as we look at moving forward, we just have a few minutes left. Yep. Let's talk about how Siemens is helping the industry move forward around workforce.
Yes.
Workforce is always a big passion that you guys have from all the training programs to all the conversations I've had with Siemens. What excites you most about what Siemens is doing in the industry to get this next generation excited about manufacturing and how the technology that you're helping deploy is making that happen?
I mean, so we talked about the big transformation that's happening in the very beginning. We feel very passionate about digitally transforming American industries. That's what we're here. That's what we want to do. We want to embrace that. And I talked about, the skill gap that's going to exist. Mm-hmm. Depending on what report you read, it's anywhere from 4 million to 6 million by 2030. Yeah. So that's right around the corner. So people have to introduce automation. They don't 100%. Have a choice, right? And so when you introduce automation, you're introducing new technology. I got another cool stat for you. It talked about just a few years ago, you could train an operator on new technology, and that operator was good for 7 years. So I could train you. Jake, here's the machine. I want you to run this machine. You're good to go for 7 years. I'll see you in 7 years.
Exactly.
I'll give you a couple raises in between. Don't worry.
What is it now?
Now it's less than 3 years, and they're projecting it's going to be close to 18 months.
That's how fast the technology is changing in this industry.
So learning and development has to be a part of your DNA. Yeah. And again, we go back to the Copilot. That's where the Copilot is so critical, is now when you're walking up the machine, you can actually dialogue with it, and you can understand what's going on, and you can work with the machine and have this human-in-the-loop interaction and work with the machine to make those changes that you need to make and continue with production. Yeah. I also want to demystify, AI is not going to replace jobs. I promise you. First of all, we don't have enough. I just told you the stat, right? But what I do say, and what a lot of people say, is somebody using AI will replace your job.
Exactly.
So that's why we go back to this. You have to embrace it. Yeah. I mean, it's the technology is here. It will change our society. We are embracing it, like I told you, in many different ways. The workforce is probably the one we're most passionate about because we know there's a lot of knowledge out there. The other stat I'll tell you is 25% of the workforce is going to, especially on the shop floor, is going to retire in less than 4 years.
Yeah. And when you look at when this new technology comes, the great part about it is you have the generation right now in high school, in college, that is using this technology every single day. When you bring this next generation on board, they are going to be ready, they're going to be comfortable with it, and they're going to say, these are all the areas you can deploy, and I already have a lot of the skill sets to make that happen. So that's why it's so important to do that. We're going to wrap things up. Okay. If people want to learn more about Siemens, where do they start?
Go to booth 3232.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of people that are ready, willing, having a lot of great conversations with everyone walking up. So again, you can learn about everything I talked about and more there. So that's number one. Obviously, online, we have a huge online presence.
100%.
And then in 3 weeks, like
Realize Live.
Realize Live
back here in Detroit.
In this building. Is a fantastic way to engage, network with a lot of our customers. I think we already have 1,300 customers signed up.
That's fantastic.
Focused on Siemens, so it's a great networking opportunity as well.
Awesome. Well, Chris Stevens joined me today, Senior Vice President and GM of Siemens Automation US. This is Jake Hall, the Manufacturing Millennial. Thank you for joining us this morning for a Automate Live session. We'll see you guys soon.
Go Lions.
Go Lions.